They say revenge is best served cold. Personally, I prefer it medium rare, paired with a 1985 Burgundy and delivered with a smirk across a white linen table. The maitre d' clocked me the second I stepped inside le vrai table, the kind of upscale French place where a glass of water gets you side-eye if you don't pronounce it AU. His eyes widened slightly, then reset to professional mode like nothing had happened. "Good evening," my younger brother Nathan announced, straightening his overpriced collar like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. "Reservation under Albrecht, party of 5. I stayed back a step, letting them do their usual performance. Dad led the way with his habitual scowl, flanked by my stepmother Chloe, who wore her wealth like a shield. Nathan's girlfriend Madison strutted in like she belonged on a yacht, and finally me, Alina. The family's eccentric disappointment dressed in black slacks and a shirt from a boutique that didn't even have a brand label. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. I'd been quietly uninvited from Dad's 60th birthday dinner, but Madison posted about the dinner on her Instagram with 5 laughing emojis and a not-so-subtle just family caption. Funny. I'd been financing the restaurant they were about to eat in for almost a year. "This way," the maitre d' said, leading us through the artfully dim room. I caught a few glances from the waitstaff. Respectful nods. Familiar. Chloe clutched her Hermes bag like someone might breathe on it. "Wow," Madison whispered to Nathan. "You'd think the hostess stand would have noticed your Rolex faster." I sat quietly. I always did when they pulled this. For years, they loved pretending I was barely scraping by. Maybe because I didn't show up in head-to-toe designer or talk about market expansions at brunch. "You look comfortable," Chloe offered, as I sat down, eyes drifting over my minimal makeup. "I am, thanks for noticing," I said with a small smile. Madison glanced at the menu, then fake whispered, "Some of us are used to these prices, huh?" "Some of us helped set them," I said under my breath. That's when Luca walked over, my general manager. My best hire, actually. He didn't even glance at the others. "Miss Graves, welcome back," he said, setting down the wine list. "Your usual table was taken, but this one is set to your preferences. Shall I have Chef Emile send out the duck confit, or will you start with the oysters tonight?" Nathan blinked. Chloe dropped her fork. Dad finally looked up from inspecting the wine prices. My brother recovered first. "Wait, your what?" "My table," I said. "I own the place. Well, the chain. Bought it 9 months ago." "You," Chloe's voice cracked. His voice cracked like a dropped crystal flute. "I know. It's hard to keep up when someone doesn't post every dollar they make on social media." "But you live in that shoebox in the arts district," Madison blurted. "It's a penthouse, with art from actual artists, not just gallery names. And I like small spaces. They don't echo as much when no one's trying to impress strangers." Luca handed me a wine glass with practiced grace. 1985 Bourgogne as requested. Dad visibly flinched at the price tag implied in that label. "Did you know?" he asked, voice rough. "You mean, did I know you all thought I was a failure while dining on my dime for a year?" "Yeah, I knew." The silence was thick. Tense, delicious. "Please let us comp something tonight." "No," I said sharply, cutting off Luca. "Bill them full price, plus gratuity. This is a celebration after all." Dad frowned. "You're being dramatic." I leaned in. "No, Dad, I'm being deliberate." Madison had gone pale. Chloe still hadn't picked up her utensils. Nathan was checking his phone under the table, probably verifying my name on the ownership docs. I sipped the wine, let the flavor linger. "The foie gras is exceptional tonight," I said. Chef Emile outdid himself. "You mean he works for you?" Nathan said slowly. "Loyal to the plate and the paycheck," I replied. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Chloe hissed. I shrugged. "Maybe because every time I tried to do something different, you all laughed. Remember when I said I was studying restaurant systems management, Dad said I should leave real business to the men? Dad said nothing. Remember when I asked for a loan to start my first pop-up, you all went on a ski trip instead? Still nothing. Well, I said brightly, it worked out anyway." Luca returned. "Chef says the sea bass is ready. Shall I bring it out?" "Please do," I said. "And send a bottle to the table across from us, the woman in red. She's the reviewer from Savareau. She'll want to compare notes." Nathan choked. "You invited a food critic to Dad's birthday." "No," I said. "I invited myself. This is my schedule. You're dining in it." And that's when it happened, the shift. I could feel it. The moment they realized everything had flipped. That I wasn't the embarrassment. I was the backbone, the breadwinner, the one whose generosity they'd depended on silently, unknowingly. I didn't need to gloat. They were already doing the math. And dessert hadn't even been served yet. The thing about silence is it's not always awkward. Sometimes it's louder than shouting. That's what was happening at the table. They weren't eating. They weren't talking. They were recalculating everything they thought they knew about me. And I was letting them. Dad finally spoke, voice brittle. "So, you've been the one footing the bill this whole time." "For this restaurant, yes," I said evenly. "And for the one in Lisbon. And Kyoto. Oh, and the wine bar Chloe brags about visiting in Paris, mine too." Chloe blinked. "Wait, that wine bar?" I nodded. "Yeah, the one you said had too elegant a vibe for my budget." "Funny how that works." Nathan finally pushed his phone aside. "You're serious? You actually built all this?" "I didn't win the lottery, Nate. I built it. Brick by brick, system by system. While you all thought I was struggling because I wasn't driving a Tesla or posting boardroom selfies." Madison's voice, a touch smaller now, cut in. "But you live so modestly, and you wear Gucci belts like they're Girl Scout badges." "We all make choices." Dad's brows furrowed. "But you studied hospitality. We thought that was temporary." "Yeah, because no one asked why I was passionate about it. Just assumed it wasn't real." I watched Chloe fidget. "We were worried," she muttered. "No, you were embarrassed," I replied softly. "You hated that I worked nights, that I had calluses, that I was always exhausted. But you never asked what I was building, because you didn't think it could amount to anything." Madison picked at her salmon. "So why'd you invite yourself tonight?" "I didn't. Luca called me when your reservation came through. He thought I should know the Albrechts were back minus me, of course. Again." Nathan winced. "Okay, that was Madison's idea. She said it'd be less weird if it was just immediate family." "Oh, please," I cut in, holding back a laugh. "You don't have to lie. I saw the post. Only real ones invited." That's what it said, right? Madison went red. Chloe looked like she wanted to melt through the floor. "I just wanted to avoid drama," Madison mumbled. "By erasing someone who built the roof, you're dining underclassy." Dad interjected sharp now. "Alina, enough." "No," I said steady. "You don't get to shut me down anymore. Not when I paid for your birthday wine, this Michelin-starred chef, and the staff you think of as background noise." Luca appeared again, clearing plates with the elegance of a dancer. "The next course is ready. Shall I bring it out now, Miss Graves?" I smiled. "Yes." "And send my compliments to Emile. The risotto at table 4 was spectacular. He should try that saffron reduction I suggested next week." Nathan's mouth hung open. "Wait, you give the chef notes?" "He requests them. I'm not just an owner, I'm a collaborator." You really are the boss." "For nearly a year," I said. "And not once did any of you notice or care." Dad looked down. Chloe stayed quiet. But it was Nathan who finally leaned in, curiosity replacing pride. "So, how'd you pull it off?" he asked. "I mean, no offense, but we all thought you were well." "A failure," I offered, eyebrows raised. He hesitated. "No, just off the radar." "I had a partner," I said simply. "At first. We built our first concept out of a converted food truck, sold out every night. Eventually, we pitched to investors. I got bought out of one deal, reinvested in another, took equity, opened 3 spots in 2 years. The rest snowballed." Chloe blinked. "So you're rich?" "I'm sustainable," I said. "The restaurants run on green systems. Staff get profit sharing. I don't just make money, I make it matter." Madison gave a dry laugh. "Guess I should have been nicer to you, huh?" "Guess so," I said, sipping the wine. "Then again, I don't give discounts for backpedaling." The next course arrived, veal tenderloin with truffle glaze, a dish not even on the public menu yet. I took a bite. Perfection. "Still can't believe this," Nathan muttered. "I can," I said. "You all ignored the signs because you didn't want to believe I could be more without your approval." Chloe spoke again, voice thin. "You could have told us." "I tried," I said. "But every time I mentioned an idea or a project, you either changed the subject or laughed. Eventually, I just stopped trying." Dad swirled his glass slowly. "So, what's next?" "More restaurants. Maybe," I said. "There's a project in Singapore I'm considering, but I'm also working on a mentorship program for women who want to break into hospitality without the family baggage." Chloe's lips pressed into a line. You're still bitter. No, I'm busy. Bitterness is what happens when you stop moving forward. I didn't. Luca returned, his timing impeccable. Miss Graves, the investors from Seoul are online too. They'd like to confirm your flight next week. Tell them I'll call back in an hour. Family dinner and all. He nodded, left again. You have international investors? Nathan asked. Of course. What did you think, I just own a corner cafe and brag a lot? He didn't answer. Dad finally sighed heavy and low. I underestimated you. I shrugged. You weren't the only one. The final course arrived cheese board artfully curated. I barely touched it. I was full of quiet satisfaction, full of vindication, full of the calm that comes when people who doubted you are forced to sit in the truth of your success. Nathan leaned back. So, do we still need reservations next time? I tilted my head. Depends. You planning to tip properly this time? He smirked, embarrassed. Touché. Madison stood abruptly. I need the restroom, she muttered, nearly tripping on her heels as she walked away. Bring her a napkin, I called lightly. That lipstick's been bleeding all night. Dad actually laughed a short, reluctant chuckle. You've changed. No, I said, standing. You just never saw me clearly. As I made my way toward the kitchen, passing the wine cellar and nodding to a couple of regulars, I felt the shift completely settle. This wasn't revenge. Not really. This was reclamation. This was visibility. This was proof that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And now they finally understood who they'd left off the guest list. The kitchen was buzzing like it always was, controlled chaos symphonic in its own way. Steam curled up from copper pans, knives clicked against chopping boards, and every movement had purpose. Chef Emile saw me the moment I walked in and smiled like someone seeing a co-conspirator in the middle of a heist. You've got the family at your table, he asked, wiping his hands on a towel. All 4 of them, I said, leaning against the prep counter. Like a very awkward, overdressed reunion tour. He raised an eyebrow. You want me to burn the steak for your brother? I laughed. Tempting, but no. Let's keep it classy. Just serve them the truth in multiple courses. He went back to plating with the precision of a surgeon. They understand now. They're beginning to, I said, which is more than I expected. A young sous chef passed me the dessert tasting lineup. I scanned it quickly. Emile's latest creation was in their lavender creme brulee with a citrus twist. He'd been workshopping it for weeks. This is the one, I said. End the dinner with this. Outside the kitchen, I could see the dining room through the frosted glass. My father was staring at his plate like it held answers. Chloe whispered something to Nathan, who didn't even respond. Only the sound of forks meeting porcelain remained. The power balance had shifted so completely it was almost quiet. And that's when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made me pause. Morgan & Chase Capital. The investment group that had been courting me for months. I wasn't interested, but they didn't seem to get the message. I let it ring out, then opened my messages. Another one from their rep, 12 times EBITDA. Call us. We're ready to move. I smirked. They were persistent. But I didn't build this for the exit. I built it because nobody thought I could. As I stepped out of the kitchen, Luca appeared at my side. The woman at table 5 recognized you. She said she's from Forbes, wants to confirm an interview. Tell her yes, but only if she eats dessert. He nodded and vanished like he always did, efficient and ghost-like. I approached the table again just as the final course arrived. Emile's masterpiece was placed in front of them with a flourish. The golden crack of the brulee's surface echoed slightly in the quiet. This is incredible, Chloe said, stunned. It's like a perfume you can eat. He used to work for Alain Ducasse, I said, sliding into my seat. I hired him away with a better offer and better ethics. Dad put down his spoon. This is what you've been doing while we thought you were struggling. I was never struggling. I was building something. It just didn't look like what you value. You mean cars and condos and golf memberships, Nathan muttered. Exactly. I put my money in people, infrastructure, partnerships, not designer logos. Chloe glanced at me, eyes narrowing. So what's your end game? Fame, recognition? No, I said. Legacy. I want to change how this industry works. Better food, better treatment for workers, better ownership models. And yes, if people finally give me credit, that's just a side effect. Nathan leaned in. You ever gonna go public? Maybe, but not because I want to make headlines. If I do it, it'll be because I've stabilized a model that works on scale. Dad looked at me differently now. Not with pride, not yet, but with something closer to curiosity. Maybe even respect. You know, he said slowly, you're starting to sound like a CEO. I am one, I said. Always have been. I just didn't bother telling people until now. Madison finally returned from the bathroom, red-eyed and quiet. She slid into her seat and avoided eye contact. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything left to say to someone who couldn't see value unless it wore a price tag. Dad cleared his throat. I owe you an apology. We judged you wrong. I know, I said. And I'm not mad. Not anymore. I've just outgrown the need to prove anything to any of you. Chloe looked down. We thought we were doing what was best. No, you were doing what was easy. Supporting the obvious. Praising what looked successful from the outside. You didn't want to understand what mattered to me because it wasn't shiny. Nathan nodded. You always were different. That's what scared you, I said. Different meant unpredictable. And unpredictable doesn't look good on Christmas cards. Luca returned with the check, setting it down in front of my father. Dad blinked. I thought you were treating, he said. I did, I replied. For the food. But the conversation, that one's priceless. He chuckled dryly and reached for his wallet. Add the service charge, I reminded him. Jean and Lena both covered your table. They deserve it. Nathan pulled out his card. I'll split it. No need, I said. Just start tipping better when you eat out. Everywhere. Not just when you think someone's watching. He gave a small, guilty smile. Fair. As they signed the receipt, I stood and gathered my things. I've got to prep for a call with Tokyo. We're doing a joint concept with a local ramen legend there. Dad raised his eyebrows. Tokyo? Yeah, and after that, Cape Town. Then maybe Buenos Aires. Haven't decided. He stared at me, then offered his hand. You did good, kid. I looked at it for a moment, then shook it. Thanks. Took a while, but I got there. Chloe stood and touched my arm. Will we see you again soon? I tilted my head. We'll see. I'm not disappearing. But I don't blend in anymore either. They filed out quietly, each one looking back like they still hadn't entirely processed who I'd become. Madison never said a word. As they left, Luca approached again. Your car's ready. I'll walk, I said. I need the air. He nodded and handed me my coat. Also, Chef says the Paris menu is finalized. Wants your blessing before rollout. Tell him I'll review it tomorrow. Tonight's been enough. Outside, the night air was sharp and cool, the streetlights flickering against cobblestones. I walked past the valet and down the street, past the floral shop that had closed for the night, past the bookstore that still left a light on. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. The message was short. We didn't know. I'm sorry, can we talk? I read it twice, then slipped the phone back into my pocket. Maybe, just not tonight. Some truths don't need to be spoken immediately. Some take time to settle. And some, like the fact that the girl they once dismissed had become the woman whose world they now orbited, don't need words at all. The air tasted different when you walk home from a dinner like that, like something old has finally broken loose inside you. It wasn't just the cold brushing my face or the faint scent of lavender and garlic still clinging to my jacket. It was the weight of a years-long ache finally lifted, not with shouting or slammed doors, but with silence and truth. I didn't take the main streets. I wove through the quieter alleys of the city, past dim bakery windows and shuttered antique stores' boots, tapping lightly against the stone like punctuation marks to a speech I hadn't planned but had somehow delivered anyway. When I reached my building, I didn't hesitate. The doorman greeted me with a smile, and I nodded back, slipping through the lobby with the ease of someone who belonged there, not someone pretending to. My apartment, technically a penthouse, but styled like a minimalist haven, welcomed me like always. Clean lines, neutral tones, a single orchid by the window. I didn't need opulence. I needed space that breathed. I shed my coat, dropped my bag, and stood there in the quiet hum of the night city lights blinking far below. My phone was still buzzing on the counter messages piling in like missed trains. Nathan had sent a picture of the dessert with a half-hearted caption, "That brulee was insane." Madison's message just said, "Guess I owe you one." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I'd learned the value of not rushing to bridge every emotional gap. Letting people sit with their discomfort was sometimes the most honest thing you could do. I made tea chamomile steeped slowly and sat on the couch without turning the TV on. Just quiet. Just space. Just me. It wasn't until the third sip that I saw the email from Forbes. Subject line, confirming feature interview, women reshaping fine dining. I smiled. Not for the press, but because a younger version of me would have killed to know this day was possible. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Old habit. Most of my best ideas arrived before the world started moving. I pulled up the expansion reports, went over the Tokyo timeline, then skimmed through hiring proposals for the new mentorship program. I'd built a network of women chefs, sommeliers, and restaurateurs who'd never had the right door opened for them. Now they had a key, and I wasn't about to gatekeep what I'd worked for. Around 8, my phone rang. Not buzzed. Rang. It was my dad. I let it go to voicemail, then played it. His voice was scratchy, uncertain. "Alina, I didn't say enough last night. I didn't know. I think I didn't want to know. I'm sorry, call me when you can." I sat with that for a moment. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. It was the first honest voicemail I'd ever gotten from him. Still, I didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, I called Emil. We went over the Cape Town draft menu, arguing about the spice ratios for exactly 20 minutes before landing on a compromise neither of us would admit was perfect. After that, I met with my attorney. There'd been more acquisition interest, and I wanted the legal groundwork to stay ironclad. Just because I wasn't selling didn't mean I wasn't protecting what was mine. That afternoon, I got a surprise knock on the door. Not a buzz from downstairs, a knock. I opened it to find Chloe standing there holding a paper bag from one of those trendy bakeries she used to mock. "I didn't know what you liked," she said awkwardly, but I figured croissants were neutral. I stepped aside. "You walked here." She nodded. "Your father dropped me off 2 blocks away. Said it would be better if I came alone." We sat at the kitchen island. She didn't touch her coffee. I didn't say much. She fidgeted with the edge of the napkin. "I didn't like who I was last night," she said finally. "And I've been thinking about how easy it was to pretend you didn't matter just because you didn't look like what we expected." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean I didn't wear your labels or chase your status symbols?" She flinched. "Yes, exactly that." She met my eyes. "But I know now that you were building something real, and I ignored it because it made me question how I'd spent my own years. That I hadn't expected. A rare, raw honesty." I studied her face. Still polished, still elegant, but softer. Less sure, more human. "So what do you want now?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, voice low. "Just to say it out loud. That I was wrong. That I missed seeing you." She took a shaky breath. "You remind me of your mother sometimes. Quiet at first, but impossible to ignore once you're paying attention." That hit harder than I expected. I didn't reply right away, just let the warmth of the tea steady me. Finally, I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This was meant for you years ago. I found it when I cleaned out some old files. It's from your mom. She wrote it before she passed." My chest tightened. I took it carefully, hands trembling just a little. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Sharp, looping, confident. For Alina. "When the world forgets who you are, remember who you're becoming." I didn't open it. Not yet. Some things need the right moment. Chloe stood. "I'll leave you to it." She paused at the door. "You don't have to forgive me today. But I hope one day, maybe you will." As the door closed, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not resolution, but possibility. I stared at the envelope in my hands, wondering how different my path might have been if I'd opened it years ago. Or maybe not. Maybe the detours and the silence and the dinners I wasn't invited to were all part of the path I needed to walk to become who I am now. Later that night, as the city wound down and the sky turned its deep indigo shade, I lit a candle by the window, opened the envelope, and read. Her words were short. Just a few lines, but they landed like anchors. Alina, some people won't see your strength until it's towering over them. That's okay. You don't owe them your blueprint, just your light. Shine anyway. I read it 3 times before folding it back into the envelope and placing it beside the orchid. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at them, not at the past. I was just ready for more, for peace, for everything I hadn't dared to want before. And this time, I wouldn't shrink myself to make anyone comfortable, not even for family. Some people think peace comes after a fight when the shouting stops and apologies begin. But for me, peace arrived differently. It came in the form of clear mornings, long hours in test kitchens, and the weight of no longer needing permission. A week had passed since that dinner. A week since my father's voice cracked on a voicemail. Since Chloe stood in my doorway with croissants and a letter that cracked open something old in me. I hadn't responded to them directly, but I'd let their messages keep coming. Not because I needed them, but because I'd stopped needing to prove anything. Sometimes letting people speak without interruption was the clearest mirror they could face. The Tokyo project was picking up speed. I was on Zoom calls before dawn with architects and chefs and late-night sourcing agents. The design was minimalist wood and stone inspired by Edo-era craft, but the operation was layered with modern rhythm. We were building more than a restaurant. It was an homage to quiet mastery, to unnoticed hands, to every person who ever worked in a kitchen and was never seen. And that mattered to me, because I'd been unseen too, until I wasn't. The mentorship initiative had also launched. I called it Table 9, named after the table. I was never offered in my own family. We funded scholarships, paid internship placements, and had our first class of women chefs coming in from 9 different countries. Every one of them had a story. Every one of them had been told no. Too loud, too poor, too ethnic, too old. I knew those labels. I'd worn them. Now I was teaching them to turn those labels into leverage. On a quiet Thursday, I got an invitation. Not digital, a real one. Ivory cardstock with raised gold ink. The Albrecht Family Foundation cordially invites you to the Spring Legacy Gala honoring 60 years of civic contributions and family leadership. My name was at the bottom, handwritten in my father's looping script. Come as you are. You belong. I laughed loud and alone, not out of bitterness, but out of disbelief. The girl they didn't invite to dinner was now being asked to represent the family at a gala, a legacy event. I stared at the envelope a long time, not because I didn't know my answer, but because the meaning of belonging had changed. I didn't need their recognition anymore. Still, I decided to go. Not to fit in, but to stand out. The night of the gala, I chose my armor carefully. No designer gown, no borrowed jewels, just a tailored black jumpsuit, minimalist heels, and a necklace my mother had given me before she passed. A single silver circle, unbroken. She'd told me once it symbolized self-trust, that no matter how far you bend, you always return to center. It felt right. I arrived alone, as always. The valet recognized me. One of the catering staff whispered, "That's her," as I walked past. I didn't stop, didn't wave, just smiled and kept walking. The ballroom was opulent, all white roses and string quartets. I scanned the room quickly. My father stood near the stage, surrounded by board members. Chloe was speaking to donors. Nathan was by the bar, looking more uncomfortable than usual. He spotted me, waved, and made his way over. "You came," he said, looking genuinely relieved. "I did. You look sharp." "I'm not here to blend in." He scratched his head. "Listen, I know I said it before, but you really surprised me." "I didn't do it to surprise you." "No," he said. "But you did. And now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. You're the one people talk about now." I tilted my head. "Does that bother you?" "Honestly," he shrugged. "A little, but mostly it makes me proud. We needed a shakeup. You did it, quietly. And now everyone's scrambling to catch up. Before I could reply, my name was announced from the stage. Please welcome Alina Graves, entrepreneur philanthropist, and the newest featured honoree in this year's Global Impact Initiative. I wasn't expecting that. I walked up slowly past tables of startled faces, past donors who'd never looked twice at me. My father was at the podium, stepping aside as I approached. His voice for once was soft. She didn't ask for this spotlight. She earned it, and we'd be fools not to see that now. I took the mic, looked out at the room. No shaking hands, no rapid heartbeat, just calm. I don't represent legacy, I began. At least, not the way this room defines it. I wasn't groomed for this stage. I wasn't listed in the program. I was written off politely and often. But sometimes the person you overlook becomes the one you can't ignore. Not because they changed, but because they grew louder in silence than others did with noise. I paused. Let the weight land. My legacy isn't about bloodlines or surnames. It's about tables. The ones I was left out of. The ones I built myself. And the ones I now invite others to sit at. There was a silence. Then soft applause. Then louder. Standing. My father was watching, eyes glassy, nodding slowly like he finally saw what he'd missed. I handed him the mic without a word, stepped off the stage, and didn't look back. Later that night, as people mingled and wine was poured, Chloe approached me. She didn't say anything, just took my hand and held it for a second. And that was enough. Nathan clapped me on the back like he finally meant it. Even Madison, somehow in the crowd, just mouthed the word respect. I left before dessert. Always leave on your own terms. As I walked out into the night, I passed a young girl standing near the valet, adjusting her catering uniform. She looked nervous, fiddling with her gloves. You good? I asked. She startled, then nodded. Yeah, just big crowd. I don't want to mess up. I smiled. Don't worry, half of them already have. She laughed, tension easing. Hey, I said, ever worked the line? She shook her head. But I want to. I want to be a chef someday. I handed her my card. Table 9. Look it up. We've got room for people who want to be more than just quiet in the background. Her eyes widened. You're her, the woman who runs all those places. I just winked. Not all of them, yet. Then I walked into the night heels, clicking with purpose. Not chasing legacy, defining it. On my terms. Always. Legacy is a strange thing. People chase it like it's a trophy or a name carved into some marble wall. But real legacy isn't loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It grows quietly in how you treat people, in the hands you lift, in the tables you build that weren't there before. I used to think I needed to prove something to my family, that if they saw how far I'd come, they'd finally give me what I'd wanted since I was a kid: recognition. But I realized something standing on that gala stage, looking out at a sea of suits and false smiles. I didn't need their applause. I never did. What I needed was to know deep down that I had become the kind of woman I used to look for when I felt invisible. That was enough. 3 weeks after the gala, I got a call from the Tokyo team. Construction was ahead of schedule. Emil was already prepping a small pre-launch menu, and the buzz online had begun before we even finalized the name. That was the part that made me pause. Naming a restaurant was like naming a child. You had to get it right. It had to say something even when you weren't in the room. I sat with it for days. Walked through the gardens near my place, talked with the chefs, skimmed through my old journals. It wasn't until I found a photo tucked inside my mother's old recipe notebook, a blurry image of me as a kid helping her knead dough in a tiny kitchen with plastic counters, that it came to me. I remembered what she used to say when things felt impossible. Just keep your hands in the dough, Alina. The shape will come. So I named it Dough and Dignity, a nod to where I came from, to her. To the idea that anything, even the softest things, could be shaped into something lasting with enough warmth and care. Meanwhile, Table 9 exploded. We had over 1,000 applicants for the second cohort. Women from every background, every walk of life, line cooks, dishwashers, food truck dreamers, even a grandmother who had been cooking in her village for decades but had never been paid a cent. We created satellite programs, secured funding, partnered with culinary schools, and for once, people stopped asking who I was. They started asking how they could help. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go, but something told me to pick up. Alina, the voice said. Older, familiar. It's your grandfather. I sat down slowly. I hadn't spoken to him in years. He'd cut ties after my mother died, said he couldn't handle the grief. I thought he just couldn't handle me. I heard about the Tokyo project, he continued. And the foundation. You did good, kid. Real good. I didn't say anything. I was too stunned. He filled the silence. I wanted to tell you that I'm proud. And I was wrong. I thought you had to shout to be heard in this family. But you proved me wrong by building something none of us saw coming. It wasn't everything, but it was more than I expected. We talked for 10 minutes about old memories, my mother's favorite soup the day she taught me how to peel garlic without a knife. He promised to send me her apron, said it was time it returned to the kitchen. A few days later, I visited my father. He'd asked for coffee. No gala, no stage, just a conversation. When I arrived, he looked smaller. Not sick, just stripped of the armor he always wore around me. I never gave you space, he admitted. I was so busy protecting the legacy I thought we had, I didn't see you were building a new one. I stirred my drink slowly. You didn't believe in me, he nodded. I didn't, but you did. And now you're 10 steps ahead of all of us. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'd like to try again, if you'll let me. I looked at him. The man who'd once told me restaurant work was too messy for someone with a brain, who praised Nathan for every small win and ignored every big one of mine. And I realized I didn't hate him. I didn't need to. That part of me had already moved on. I don't want an apology, I said. I want boundaries. If we're going to talk, it's going to be from a place of respect. Not pity, not legacy, just people trying to do better. He smiled, small but real, that I can do. After that, we didn't become best friends, but we spoke. More than once. Chloe sent me recipes. Nathan offered to invest in Table 9 on my terms, and Madison sent a message I never expected. You showed me I didn't need to pretend. I'm back in school now. Thank you. Months passed. The Tokyo opening was a hit. The soft launch filled in an hour. The reviews were glowing. And as I stood in the back of the dining room one night watching guests sip dashi and wipe tears over handmade soba, I felt something shift again. Not power, not pride, peace. That night, back in my hotel suite, I sat by the window with a notebook in my lap. I started writing not menus, not expansion plans, just a letter to the version of me who once believed she was small, who thought family approval was the only stamp that counted, who wore cheap shoes and whispered her dreams because no one seemed to hear them. You were never invisible, I wrote. They just weren't ready to see someone shine in silence. And then I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let the city hum me to sleep. Because legacy isn't about the name they remember. It's about the lives you lift, the voices you amplify, the truth you refuse to shrink. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show up unapologetically and let the world adjust to your presence. That's what I did. And I'm not done yet. Story 2, the manufactured glamour of our 10-year high school reunion glistened in the hotel ballroom. The air was filled with expensive watches, designer gowns, and well-rehearsed modest boasts as former classmates vied in the unspoken competition to see who had made it. Watching Jessica Martinez park her Mercedes in the valet area while making sure that everyone could see her tossing the keys behind her with a studied casualness, I stood quietly behind the refreshment table. The luxury automobile procession was completed by Madison Clark's Porsche and Blake Thompson's BMW. Is that Rachel? My God. Still driving that ancient Honda, Jessica's words echoed across the room with practiced accuracy. It was in the south parking lot when I noticed it. There are certain things that never change. Blake adjusted his Rolex and grinned. In the recent counterfeit investigation of my property management firm, I had spotted advertisements for the identical model in the imitation luxury sector. They were unaware that the hotel, its first-rate parking facilities, and the entire complex were owned by my business, Aura Holdings. It was obvious that the name on the property deed had not brought to mind Rachel Anderson, the girl they had made fun of for working as a parking attendant in high school. Rachel. With her high-end shoes clicking on marble floors, Madison Air kissed her way over. We were just talking about how autos may still be inexpensive when I made my own choice during the most recent makeover. As I checked my phone after receiving another alert from building security, I grinned. The third payment for the valet tickets was rejected this evening. Priorities vary for some of us. As I watched the bar denied Jessica's credit card once more. It's the third time with different cards correct. Like when you were checking parking fines rather than attending senior parties, Blake joked. Now what are you doing? Are you still in charge of transportation? If only they were aware that their entire evening was taking place on my property, their valuable automobiles were parked in my garage, and their rejected credit cards were being processed via my payment systems. That kind of thing. As my phone buzzed with a message from Miss Anderson, my head of security, I said, "Several valet service payment rejects. Should we start using standard procedure?" At this point, Madison displayed pictures of her beachfront home. Records from my real estate division showed that the identical home I knew was 3 months past due on its mortgage. Though the parking is quite exclusive and not really suitable for economical cars, she said to the gathered audience, "You should visit sometime." I quickly composed a response to the security protocol, making careful to correctly declare that it will start at 9 p.m. These yearly demonstrations of borrowed luxury were about to give way to something far more exciting for the evening. I'm sorry. Grinning, I made my way to my personal elevator. I must investigate a few parking validation problems. Jessica's stage whisper, "God, imagine still working in parking after 10 years," came from behind me. How humiliating. They were unaware of how humiliating this evening would turn out to be. Through our security feeds, I saw the drama develop from my private office with a view of the hotel's main entrance. Blake's attempt to purchase more expensive beverages was the first indication that anything was amiss. "I apologize, sir. Although the bartender complied with my explicit directions, all of your cards appear to have been denied. Try the house wine, maybe." He blustered, "It's impossible," and took out another card. "Investment banking is what I do." He failed to disclose that he was actually employed as a junior analyst in investment banking for a company that leased office space in another of my buildings. He was placed on final warning for inflating client returns according to his personnel file. Near the windows, Jessica was busy entertaining everyone with tales of her prosperous marketing firm. "We only deal with luxury brands," she declared, pointing to her champagne glass. "Actually, by not hiring us, this hotel is most likely losing business." I pulled up her company's proposal from the previous month with a smile. Rejected because of their dubious billing methods and history of manipulating social media numbers. It was Madison's turn next. A bunch of adoring former cheerleaders were watching her exhibit pictures of her beach property when her phone rang and her mortgage company called. My mortgage provider. She hastily turned her phone face down and mumbled, "Send it to voicemail." It was just a spam caller. I looked at the time, 8:55 p.m. Their painstakingly built facades would start to fall apart in 5 minutes with the hotel's public address system roaring to life and their priceless automobiles arriving on time. Greetings, visitors. The property owner has ordered the towing of all automobiles in the Valley region due to numerous payment problems. For payment and retrieval arrangements, please visit security. Panic erupted throughout the ballroom. Jessica's glass of champagne fell. Blake broke out of his well-groomed banking posture. As they all hurried to the windows and saw tow vehicles from my firm, of course, queue up outside Madison's beach home, pictures were forgotten. "This is ridiculous," Jessica yelled at the front counter. "Are you aware of who I am?" "Yes, Miss Martinez," the manager calmly said. In accordance with my script, our systems display an outstanding bar tab and 3 refused valet service cards. Regarding payment compliance, the owner has very high standards. Right immediately, get me the owner. Under the chandelier lights, Blake's fake Rolex gleamed as he desired. Investment banking is what I do. This place will be sued by me? Naturally, sir. The manager grinned. In fact, the owner is present on the property. You will be escorted to the executive office by security. As they were escorted to my own elevator, I saw via the cameras. Jessica is attempting to keep her dignity as an influencer. Madison desperately tried to remove her tweets about her beach property before her mortgage problems were made public, while Blake straightened his tie in preparation for a fight. Lift them up. I sent security a message. See if they can recall the parking attendant they previously marked. When they spotted me behind the desk, they froze as the elevator doors opened and they entered my office. Greetings from my hotel. I grinned. Should we talk about your unpaid invoices? Every parking ticket they had ever given me in high school was worth it for the expressions on their faces. This must be a prank of some sort. Jessica stumbled as she admired the wall of property development awards behind my desk, all of which bore my name. Her Instagram-ready posture faltered. As a parking attendant, you worked. I was able to park. I corrected her, bringing up their financial data on the huge screen in my office. I currently oversee a number of assets, including this hotel, the parking structure, and, ironically, the building where your upscale marketing firm consistently fails to pay rent. As Blake gazed at the real estate portfolio on the displays, his facade as an investment banker grew more brittle. The market value of Array Holdings, the value of the real estate assets, exceeds that of the total portfolio of your company. I concluded by mentioning the leasing arrangement for his business. In relation to that, how is the last warning against lying about investment returns going? Madison had collapsed in a chair and was looking at her phone furiously. My property management has highlighted my beach house images. I was utilizing premium real estate listings that had been stolen. I pointed out that the mortgage default notifications on your real condo are quite real, even though I can see her social media analytics. Their digital footprints flooded the displays. Every rejected card, every bounced check, every last-ditch effort to keep up appearances in a real estate industry they believed they knew. Right now, your vehicles are being hauled to our safe location, I went on nonchalantly. Although your present credit ratings may be an issue, we do accept payment plans despite the significant release costs. This is harassment. Jessica discovered her voice. This will be shared with followers of social media influencers or mode activators. Your supporters. I pulled up the customer list for her marketing agency and grinned. The ones that you bought from that bot farm that runs on my server. Those followers. Blake attempted something different. I'm sure we can figure something out, Rachel. My company manages substantial real estate interests. In my building, your company rents a little office. He is now 3 months late on utilities after I corrected him. Do you want to view the notifications? As the beach home photographs were reported for fraud, Madison continued to stare at her phone, watching her meticulously manicured social media presence fall apart. This is what will take place. I produced 3 folders, I said. Each folder has a payment plan for your numerous commitments that is based on your actual income rather than the income you claim to have. However, Jessica muttered, my image must be grounded in reality, not borrowed luxury pie clients. Blake got going. Real results, not exaggerated claims, are what we'll need to believe. Madison simply gripped her phone and watched as one post after another destroyed her phony existence. There are 2 options available to you. I went on to say that you must either sign the payment arrangements and acknowledge your current financial status, or risk collection action on all of the homes and cars involved. This isn't possible, Blake said. In fact, I grinned because I can and I am your property owner creditor and parking enforcement authority. Downstairs, the reunion was still going strong. I had no idea that 3 of their most prosperous graduates were seeing their facades fall apart in my office. I have included your Honda remark, by the way. My backup vehicle was that one. The Bentley in the private garage is my real car. The one you've spent the entire evening adoring. Success alone isn't always the greatest form of retaliation. It's seeing someone come to terms with the fact that their facade of success has been based on property. In fact, you own. More than simply their financial circumstances were altered by the fallout from that reunion night. It changed our graduating class's entire dynamic. Social media swiftly spread the word, but not in the way Jessica Blake and Madison had always hoped. At high school, a local real estate tycoon discloses who he is. Reunion turned into the uncontrollable headline. Their repossessed luxury cars and bare financial facade were too genuine for their meticulously manicured social media accounts. I sat in my private office a month later to check the status of their payment plan. In one of my secondary properties, Jessica's marketing business had been reduced to a modest office. Her new business cards, which read social media associate instead of CEO, were the only thing she could truly afford. Your most recent rent payment was received and processed. Although I see that you're still attempting to pass off stock photographs as your premium client portfolio, I told her during our required monthly review. She moved in her chair uneasily. Department shop instead of designer label. She muttered practical old habits. Following the discovery of his financial misrepresentations, Blake was moved to the compliance department of his investing business. A plain Timex had taken the place of his imitation Rolex. I saw throughout his assessment that your parking costs are up to date. You're carpooling to work now, though, according to security. A significant departure from the BMW era. Unable to look me in the eye, he acknowledged that public transportation is instructive. Madison had relocated to a small apartment in one of my residential complexes after leaving her defaulting condo. Sincere posts about repairing her finances have taken the place of her beach home photographs. I informed her that your mortgage restructuring strategy was going well, and that I valued the social media candor of living within one's means. She remarked softly, "It turns out that authenticity receives more genuine engagement than fake luxury." The annual banquet of the property management firm was the true surprise. In my capacity as owner, I was delivering the keynote address on real estate success that is genuine. A number of people from the reunion were seated in the general admission area. They were far more attentive in their expressions than we were in our high school classrooms, where you park your automobile has no bearing on your success. Enjoying Blake's sarcastic twitch, I informed the crowd. It involves creating something tangible, sometimes literally from the ground up. An alarm chimed on my phone. Our previous class president, who had boasted about his non-existent real estate empire on reunion night, had just had another fancy car removed from one of my properties. "Do we need to schedule another meeting to discuss payment arrangements?" my helper inquired. "Put it in your calendar for tomorrow." As I saw the tow vehicle go through our security procedures and get their social media data, I responded. "See what other facades require." Restructuring. Because realizing that actual ownership isn't about looks might occasionally be the finest lesson in property management. The goal is to create something authentic. Parking spots, one at a time. Eventually, they realized that I had been subtly constructing success while they had been blogging about it. That was something that would never be refused, unlike the payments they made for their fancy cars. Story 3. I was pushing my untouched beef Wellington about my plate in our formal dining room, which was illuminated by shimmering shadows from the crystal chandelier. Tonight was different from the usual tense monthly family dinners. Unspoken comments filled the air as my parents continued to exchange deep stares. "Emma," my mother remarked at last, carefully placing her wineglass down, "I've been talking to your father about your predicament." I raised my head to greet her well-applied makeup. Being the only one of the 3 Anderson children to not pursue the traditional route of attending law school and working for the family's esteemed legal practice, I was the family's disappointment at the age of 28. Circumstance. My heart began to race, but I spoke in a neutral tone. Victoria, my elder sister, grinned from the other side of the table. 32 years old. Following in her father's footsteps, she was already a junior partner at Anderson & Associates. Beside her, my 26-year-old younger brother Michael was rapidly moving up the firm's hierarchy. Indeed, Dad cleared his throat. Your steadfast refusal to work for the company, this stupid new business of yours, it has lasted long enough. I tightened my hold on my fork. 3 years ago, I created a tech company from the ground up as my stupid endeavor, creating software for legal research powered by AI. They rejected my attempt to explain how it could transform legal research as a pointless waste of time. As if commenting on the weather, Mom declared, "We're cutting you off completely. No more access to trust funds. Living in the family apartment is no longer an option. No more credit cards. You need to mature and take responsibility for your actions." There was silence in the room. Victoria grinned more broadly. Michael's interest in his green beans suddenly grew. It has been 2 years since I last touched the trust fund. Silently, I said. Mom sneered, "Don't be silly. With this small computer project of yours, how else could you be sustaining yourself?" Victoria spoke up before I could reply. "I've heard that your business is barely making ends meet." Patricia from Morgan Stanley. Emma filled me in on everything. I had to buy back a laugh. Patricia from Morgan Stanley had no idea about my company's financials. We had remained secret, purposefully avoiding detection as we developed our technology. I actually started, but my father interrupted. "Enough excuses. You have 2 choices. Join the firm as a first-year associate or face being cut off completely. We've already had the trust fund papers drawn up." "I'm not joining the firm," I said firmly. "Then you leave us no choice," Mom said dramatically. "We're doing this for your own good. You can't keep playing entrepreneur forever." Just then my phone rang. I usually silenced it during family dinners, one of Mom's strict rules. But tonight, I'd left it on purposely. The caller ID showed my assistant's name. "Excuse me," I said, standing up. "I need to take this." "Emma," Mom's voice rose sharply. "We are having a family discussion." I answered anyway, putting it on speaker. "Yes, Sophia." "Miss Anderson." My assistant's professional voice filled the dining room. "I apologize for interrupting your dinner, but you asked to be notified immediately. Our stock just hit $90 million in the private trading round. Morgan Stanley is requesting an urgent meeting about taking us public." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. Michael choked on his wine. Mom's perfectly composed face froze in shock. "Thank you, Sophia," I said calmly. "Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning." I hung up and looked around the table, taking in their stunned expressions. The chandelier lights suddenly felt brighter, illuminating their confusion and disbelief. "You were saying something about cutting me off," I asked, raising an eyebrow. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of red. But how I pulled out my chair and sat back down, finally taking a bite of my dinner. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not trying to live up to someone else's expectations. The Wellington was cold, but victory had never tasted sweeter. 90 million, Victoria whispered, her smirk completely gone. Actually, I corrected her. That's just the current stock price. The company's total valuation is significantly higher. Mom reached for her wine glass with a slightly trembling hand, but Patricia from Morgan Stanley said, "Patricia from Morgan Stanley." I interrupted. "Doesn't know anything about my company because we've kept everything private until now. The family dinner that was supposed to put me in my place had turned into something entirely different." As I sat there watching my family's carefully constructed narrative about me crumble, I couldn't help but think about how we'd gotten here. They had never believed in me, never supported my vision. They dismissed my company as a hobby, my ambitions as a face. Now sitting at the same table where they'd lectured me countless times about responsibility and family legacy, I was about to show them exactly what their disappointing daughter had built. And this was just the beginning. The next morning, I walked into Morgan Stanley's Manhattan office wearing my favorite power suit. The contrast between last night's family dinner and today's meeting couldn't have been starker. Here, I wasn't the disappointing daughter. I was the CEO of Legal Tech AI, the company that was revolutionizing the legal industry. Miss Anderson Patricia herself greeted me at the elevator, the same Patricia who'd apparently been spreading rumors about my company's failure. I had no idea you were the founder of Legal Tech. Why didn't you ever mention it at the club? I smiled politely. I preferred to let my work speak for itself. The conference room was packed with investment bankers and analysts, all eager to discuss taking Legal Tech public. As I sat at the head of the table, my phone burst with texts from my family. "Mom, we need to talk about last night." "Victoria, Dad's furious. Fix this." "Michael, holy shit, sis. Why didn't you tell us?" I silenced my phone as the meeting began. My CFO, David, started presenting our financials. 3 years of steady growth, zero debt, and a client list that included 8 of the top 10 law firms in the country, except Anderson and Associates. One analyst noted, looking up from his papers, "Any particular reason your family's firm isn't using your software?" The room went quiet. Everyone in Manhattan's legal circle knew the Andersons. Anderson and Associates prefers traditional methods. I said diplomatically, but we respect their choice to stay traditional. A few people smirked. Everyone knew what traditional meant: out, dated, resistant to change, stuck in the past. After the meeting, Patricia cornered me by the elevators. "Emma, your mother must be so proud." She never mentioned. "Actually, I cut her off. My family just found out last night. But feel free to discuss it at your next tennis match with my mother." Back at my office, my assistant Sophia was managing the fallout from last night's revelation. "Your father's phoned 6 times. She reported, your sister's in the lobby asking to see you, and your brother's been making LinkedIn requests to everyone on our executive team." I slipped off my heels and relaxed behind my desk. "Send Victoria up. Might as well confront this now." Minutes later, my sister stormed into my office looking less groomed than normal. "What is wrong with you?" she demanded. "Do you have any clue what you've done? Built a profitable firm, produced groundbreaking software, made millions without riding Dad's coattails." "Don't be cute," she snapped. "Dad's reputation is at risk. How do you think it appears that his own daughter's legal tech company is being used by every big firm except ours?" I reclined in my seat. "It most likely appeared like way when you all ignored my small computer project for 3 years. We were attempting to keep you safe." Victoria combed through her flawlessly combed hair. Tradition and relationships are crucial in the legal field. The legal profession is evolving. I cut you off. No one among you comprehends it. The rest of the business is changing, but you guys are still using manual research and leather-bound volumes. Your father wants you to sell." She spoke without thinking. "If you sell legal technology and return to the firm, he's prepared to overlook anything. In 2 years, he will even make you a partner." "Partner?" I laughed aloud. "Victoria, I'm going to go public with my business. By the end of this year, my value will surpass that of Anderson and companions." Her face was devoid of color. "What I heard you. You should also be aware of this additional fact. Your greatest adversary is Townsend and Myers. Yesterday, they signed a deal with us. They have already achieved a 60% increase in research efficiency." Victoria slumped onto a chair in my office. "Dad is going to die because of this." "No," I answered firmly. "He will be awakened by this. Victoria, the world is changing. Dad has 2 options: change or see his company go out of business." Victoria was leaving my office. I turned to face the metropolitan skyline, looking disturbed. The family meal that was meant to break me off had instead shown me how far I had come. However, I had a feeling that this was only the start of the storm. Once more, my phone buzzed. Mom texted me again. Tonight, we have an urgent family meeting. You must be present. I typed back with a smile. Apologies. Can't make it. Discuss our IPO in a board meeting. You are welcome to read about it in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. After that, I returned to my computer. I had to manage an empire. At 6 a.m. the next day, the Wall Street Journal piece was published. Legal research is being revolutionized by legal tech, a billion-dollar business. How Emma Anderson amassed a fortune without her family's legal practice noticing. Instead of the family property they had threatened to seize, I read it in my penthouse apartment, which I had purchased myself. The article went into great depth about how I had identified a market niche that conventional companies like Anderson and Associates had overlooked. At 6:05 a.m., my phone began ringing, so I put it on voicemail and opened my laptop to check the influx of incoming emails. The nation's law firms were eager to set up demos. Tech bloggers were already praising legal tech as the future of legal research, and investors were demanding meetings. Miss Anderson, through my private line, Sophia called. In the lobby is your mother. She will not go without seeing you. Sighing, I sent her upstairs. A few minutes later, Mom showed up at my door looking unusually unkempt. As she surveyed my place, her eyes grew wide. The view of Central Park, the contemporary art, and the floor-to-ceiling windows. Do you reside here? Her voice was small as she requested. I answered, for the past year. Do you want coffee? She sank into my high-end couch and nodded. I filled my pricey coffee maker with a cup for her. I had used my own money to purchase yet another luxury. She began writing the article and then stopped. Your dad? Since his company is now widely recognized for being outdated, he is not feeling well. His daughter surprised him, so I sat across from her and asked. After snapping, she managed to catch herself. Why didn't you tell us, Emma? Mom, I tried telling you about what I was building for 3 years. I was convinced that I was wasting my time, and you and Dad were too busy pressuring me to join the firm. But she muttered $1 billion. According to the article, you will rank among the nation's youngest female tech billionaires. It's interesting how success alters how people view waste, isn't it? David Townsend texted me at that very moment, and Myers just announced that they were switching all of their operations to legal tech systems. A further 30% increase in stocks. A few seconds later, Mom's phone rang. Dad probably learned that his daughter's software was now being used by his biggest rival. He will never forgive you, she muttered. No, I corrected her. He is incapable of forgiving himself. There is a distinction. I went to the office after Mom left. There was electricity in the air. Everyone was buzzing after hearing about the Wall Street Journal article. My employees stood and began applauding as I passed through the open workspace. Someone called out. I smiled, looking around at the faces of people who had believed in my vision when my own family hadn't. 3 years ago, I began. Everyone said legal tech couldn't work, that law firms wouldn't alter. That tradition was too powerful. But we proved them wrong. And this is only the beginning. More applause. Then Sophia raced over with an important message. Anderson and Associates was calling an emergency news conference. I saw it live from my workplace. Dad stood at the platform, appearing older than I'd ever seen him. Victoria and Michael surrounded him, both striving to retain their customary confident faces. Anderson and Associates is happy to announce a comprehensive digital makeover. Dad read stiffly. We will be working with premier legal IT businesses to improve our operations. I switched off the stream. They still didn't understand it. I was the owner of the sole prominent legal technology business.